Hello again, I'm Dorian Steel, and today I'm going to be discussing with you some dreams I've been having recently. I've been putting these dreams into an artificial intelligence chat GTP, which I think most people are familiar with, and I've asked this AI to interpret the dreams, what they mean. I've told it a little bit about myself as well, so that it gets more of a clear and better picture. And yeah, let's get into it. So I'll be starting off by telling you about a dream that I had, I'd say about a month ago or so. In fact, I have the exact date here in my diary. It was on Armistice Day this year, the 11th of November. So about a month ago to this day it was. I had this very unusual dream. It started off with me being 15 years old. I don't know exactly how I knew I was that old, but I was. But anyway, I was 15 years old in secondary school. I was being confronted by, I think, a teacher or fellow pupil in my class. I was being loud, aggressive, confrontational, which was very true for me at that age in real life. I had a lot of behavioural problems in my childhood. I know I talked about that in the last video I did. And then straight away, moving forward, the dream skipped to me as I am now. I was going on a holiday somewhere. I had to take a plane, and I got to this hotel room, and there was this, in my hotel room, there was this doorway leading to a theatre, and there was an unspecified stand-up comic that was performing there. And I was staying in the hotel room with this girl who also happened to be staying there. This isn't a girl that I know in real life or that I've ever known in the past. This is a made-up dream girl. She had red curly hair. She was very beautiful. And me and her were in the hotel room. And, there wasn't, we weren't having sex or sleeping together or anything. And every time we go through this doorway to go to the theatre, for me to take her out, the doorway gets smaller and smaller with each visit that we do through this pathway through this doorway from the hotel room. And eventually the doorway gets so small, it's like this empty gap, and the girl who I'm there with, she gets on her hands and knees to try and crawl through, and she eventually yells and she screams out, "I can't do this." So she can't fit through the gap, it's so small. But I help her back up with my hand, and we end up getting the plane back home together. Except though, when we're at the airport and we're getting ready to board the plane, I end up losing her in a crowd of people. I remember in the dream feeling kind of sad about that. I felt something. I'm not sure maybe quite what it was, but it wasn't quite nice. But the moment passed, so bygones be bygones. Continuing in the dream, I just went and got my plane home. But as I landed in the airport, I was arriving in the terminal checkout to leave the airport and go home. And as I go down the set of stairs, the girl in the dream who I'd lost is suddenly there at the bottom of the stairs waiting for me. We run up to each other, we hug and kiss, and it's all wonderful, and it's very beautiful. And we go home, we go back to my house where I'm living, and it's just me living in this one house alone. And we're talking about how we're going to get married and start our new life together, and it was really nice. And all of a sudden, at the very end of the dream now here's the kicker. There was this, so the front door, we'd come in through the back door for some reason, but when we come back and I turned around to check something, and we're still talking together, I see the front door, and the front door was wide open. And in that moment when I saw this front door quite ajar, I felt a sharp rise in my stomach and my gut. My adrenaline was turned on, my defenses were ready, and it was at that moment that I woke up from this dream. Normally when I dream, it's either very violent or it's normally like some kind of a sex dream, and you know, those happen in everyone. I wake up and I can never remember really the full details of any of my dreams ever, but this dream stuck with me for some reason, and all day I could picture it playing over and over again in my head. I was in college that day, I was in university. So, and by the time I got to about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd been up since I think 5 o'clock, I couldn't stop thinking about this dream. So I had an idea. What if I was to tell ChatGTP about myself and about the dream that I'd had? And so I described everything, did it all as I was sat in class typing away on my laptop, and the results were actually quite interesting. And so that's really why I wanted to make this video. So the first theory that ChatGTP has about this dream of mine is that the part about my school days when I'm 15 years old, it's just me sort of processing past emotions of feeling, you know, misunderstood, maybe threatened, emotionally neglected, things like that. And I don't know why that's connected to the rest of the dream, and you'll sort of see where I'm going with that in a bit. But that's what that was. Now, things like hotels, doorways and airports, it turns out they all happen to represent change in dreams. You know, something's changing in your subconscious, in your psyche, in your, you know, pathology, whatever you want to call it, your way of thinking. And so that seems to be a big theme, is that something has changed within me, and it's got a romantic twist to it. Now, the red-haired girl being in the dream is supposed to be a representation of a desire for an emotional connection on some degree, you know, a romantic connection with a girl. And I think that's fair to say that that's pretty true, highly likely, because, you know, I'm very open about the fact that, you know, I do want to be married in the future, and fuck hell, I want to be married today, but I'll have to be a bit more realistic with that goal for now. And so the doorway that shrinks constantly in this girl's hotel room in this dream is supposed to be indicative of, or representative rather, of my willingness or ability to be emotionally vulnerable. Now, at first, when I read that on the AI summary, whatever you call it, I was a bit confused, because I thought, I'm not even sure what emotional vulnerability actually is. So I googled it, I looked it up, and it's basically for somebody like me, or maybe for, you know, people who aren't psychopathic, it's that you're emotionally honest with people. You express how you really feel inside, and you don't put on any sort of a facade, which sounds like vulnerability now that I'm saying it out loud, so that's probably what it is. Do I desire this on some level, to be emotionally vulnerable? I mean, I'm not sure about that. I say it and my gut instinct is to go no, but is that just because that's what I'm used to, or that's how I've always viewed things in that way, of everything's like a game and I can't be emotionally vulnerable? But apparently that was a theme within the dream, and the fact that the girl in the shrinking doorway, eventually it got so small and she couldn't fit in it anymore, meant that she couldn't fit into the expectation of being with somebody who's not emotionally vulnerable. So it's like my brain kind of telling me I have to be more that way if I'm going to have a successful relationship with a woman in the future, which I definitely think is an interesting thing. So remember I said earlier in this dream that, you know, we got reunited at the airport after losing each other, me and this imaginary dream girl. So you'll remember in the last part of the dream I said earlier that I was, you know, reunited with this girl at the airport. I took her home, and, you know, we're talking about spending the rest of our lives together, getting married, and, you know, living at this house that I lived in. And suddenly my heart rate rose through the roof quickly. My adrenaline sort of spiked, which was what woke me up out of it. And ChatGTP had a meaning for that as well. And it's that the house is sort of representative of me, you know, or it's my environment, my safe space. Just like anyone's home is their safe space, it's their space to control. And the fact of me in the dream, I invited this woman into it, and the door being open is a metaphor, a sort of a way of saying that if I'm going to let somebody, or if I'm going to let a girl in this case into my life, I have to leave the door emotionally ajar. So I think the point of that dream, I think that's so strange, because even though I've had this dream and I accept that that is likely that probably is the correct interpretation of it, I'm still completely paranoid of trusting anybody. I don't trust people in any sense, romantic or otherwise. I don't have any sort of deeply ingrained sense of trust. I always think that there's going to be that 1% chance of you screwing me over or trying to get one up on me, or if you think you're better than me. And because for me, trust and vulnerability, those are things that take away my sense of power and control over another individual or situation. And if you know anything about psychopaths, is that we live for the power and control that we have over others. Very similar or the same to somebody who is a narcissist or with narcissistic personality disorder. Since this one dream, over the past, I'd say 3 weeks, I've had a couple of more dreams involving attractive women who I have known in real life, that have been somewhat very graphic and violent. I won't get too detailed, but you can imagine what those are like. And honestly, some of these dreams that I have, they would be your worst nightmare. I never wake up from these violent dreams regarding women I've known in the past worried or anxious or nervous or anything. But again, I did the same thing. I wish I could go into more detail about them, but I simply can't on here, otherwise I would get struck. So after my dreams becoming more violent and graphic regarding women, it turns out that I have quite a few emotional problems regarding relationships, one of them being emotional vulnerability. It's sort of a more intense rehash of the airport dream that I had previously. Going forward with what I've learnt about myself, I have sort of made a deal with myself to be more emotionally honest and vulnerable should I meet a potential future partner. And because I do think, I'm quite a big traditionalist, in the sense that, I want marriage, kids, I want to be a successful husband and have a good career as a doctor. And, I do logically understand that if I'm going to have a future relationship that works, I can't use the same pattern of thinking and behaviors as I have with all other previous girlfriends in the past. I get that. I get now, finally in the end, that's going to have to change. But it's just going to be a very tough thing, not seeing having an intimate relationship as some sort of power game, because that is how I'm wired. The thing is about me is that when I'm more honest about my emotions and feelings, or what I'm not feeling, or thoughts that I'm having, that tends to be very off-putting to somebody who's normal, somebody who's not like me, because people who aren't like me, they have empathy. How that would fare in future dating life, I'm really not too sure. See, I've had quite a few of these dreams now, and I think it's finally set in the message that if I'm going to have a successful relationship with a woman, and if I'm going to have a successful marriage, that doesn't end in divorce, then I'm going to have to be more emotionally vulnerable, and maybe emotionally honest is the way to word it. Again, I don't like the word vulnerable at all, at least not directed towards me. So, in other news, I've got exams coming up. I just finished my classes for college as of this week, 2 days ago. We've been doing mock exam questions, and I've been passing practically all of them nearly. So I'm really taking in the information in. I'm feeling confident about my exams. As for dating, not doing it at the moment. I think I need to work on, obviously, besides my emotional lack of emotional openness, I also need to work on reducing paranoia. I always have a tendency to try and predict the future, which is a thing with paranoid people. I won't just guess what you're going to do. I know what you're going to do, so I'm going to act preemptively on it. And I always think that every relationship now is just going to end in flames. So it's like, well, what's the point? Why do I bother? It doesn't get me down emotionally, you know. I don't feel sad about this. I won't cry. But you know, it's a hindrance, and you know that's what it is. That's what I'm going to call it. It's hindering to, you know, my ability to move forward and progress in that area of my life. And I think no matter what disorder you have, if you have genuine intentions on getting better and, you know, having these successful milestones in your life like everyone else, then there's no reason why you shouldn't, as long as you're putting in the effort and the work. Had a bit of an incident at college recently. Some classmates, not in my class but in another class, have found my YouTube channel and social media, and one thing led to another. There were some comments made against myself that I wasn't too happy about. So I rather politely threatened a few people. But as they say, every cloud has a silver lining. I've decided to refer myself to my university's mental health department. I've told them about my diagnosis. So in the new year, at some point, hopefully maybe in January, there is a highly likely chance that I'll be restarting cognitive behavioural therapy again. Well, that's the end of the show for this week. Make sure you don't forget to like the video below, comment, and let me know what you think. I know this is a bit of a heavy topic, quite complex, and you know, it was very confusing for myself at times. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. So for me, for now, it's take care and arrivederci.